Hi guys, Louis at Defending Elvis. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. So the Beatles made a massive impact on my life. Not as big as Elvis, but it still was a very big thing. I absolutely adored the Beatles and loved their music. Obviously, for me, Elvis will always be number one, but the Beatles for me were number two. Um, guys, I discovered the song "I Just Can't Help Believing" when I was very young, around 1971-2 time. Um, just an accidental find that set me on a path as someone who even saw Elvis's family. That's how it affected me. A role model, someone to guide me. 100%, I was completely transformed when I discovered Elvis. The very essence of me changed when I discovered Elvis. Not just his music, the way he looked and his movies. And everything about Elvis appealed to me. So a couple of years later, I come across, by accident, again, Sergeant Pepper's album. Not your standard mainstream album. Well, we had the original albums. By the time Sergeant Pepper comes along, there's a completely different style of the Beatles, isn't there? But that just happens to be the album I discovered. I always remember the song "She's Leaving Home" and "When I Get Older," all that one. So I discover the Beatles. Then I want to know everything about them, just like I did with Elvis. I went to my local newsagents, back then W.H. Smith's. I wanted to buy any magazine, see what records, or back then it would have been tapes and records. I wanted to know everything about the Beatles in the same way as I did that with Elvis, but more so with Elvis. But I didn't have pictures of the Beatles on my walls. I had Elvis pictures on my walls, but I really did like the Fab Four, their personalities. That I found, all the old footage, and obviously their movies. Yeah, of course their music. I loved it. Absolutely loved their music. So I've always had a massive love for Elvis and the Beatles, and then rock and roll comes with that. Rock and roll comes with that. I love rock and roll. Yeah. So today I thought I want to honor Louis discovering the Beatles as an Elvis fan, because that's what I was. So I've been going back and forth. I want to do it right. I want to introduce how it affected me, how I felt. Also, then telling the story of Elvis meeting the Beatles. So I've been going back and forth, and eventually we've come up with this. I want to read it on my Facebook. I've done a little short Elvis meeting the Beatles. I think it was 1965 on the 27th of August. So just letting you guys know about that meeting. Could you imagine? Yeah. So I'm going to read it off to you. This is quite a long post, but it was worth it to me because I want it to be right, because it changed my life so much. And I know many of you love Elvis and the Beatles. I do understand that there is a bit of friction concerning Elvis and the Beatles with some people, but I would say generally I get the feeling that people that are Elvis fans also love the Beatles. I know I'm going to get some negative comments. I expect it. I usually do. When I bring up the topic of Elvis and the Beatles, there is a bit of friction, yeah? But one thing I do believe is that the Beatles loved Elvis, and Elvis shaped the Beatles to become who they become. Obviously, I would say the second biggest band. No, not band, because Elvis wasn't a band. He was a singular artist, but almost as big as Elvis. Some would say as big. I think the only other thing that can compare is Michael Jackson. Even that, I've got a load of footage of Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie, but that is for another topic. Okay, guys? So let's just look at the pictures quickly, and then we're going to read the script that I pieced together with help, going back and forth. It actually took me a few hours to get the script to where I wanted it. Right, so I think this is the only known picture. you've got Elvis coming out of the doorway. I think he's in his Bel Air home, and you can see John there. I can see George there. That looks like Charlie Hodge facing the back to us. I'm not sure. So it's not very clear, is it? It's not very clear. So it was, I think Colonel Tom Parker wanted it to be a private meeting with no pictures. I think that's the case, yeah? Just some old pictures. Look, when they were at the Shea Stadium in 1965. We've all seen the footage. Amazing, amazing. They really did take America by storm. We've all seen the footage of them at the airport, the fans waiting for them. Come on, there was a time where the Beatles were absolutely adored by Americans. I know things changed a bit. I've seen the interviews with John Lennon, and quite concerned about something he had said being taken in the wrong way. So we know about that, but that isn't for our topic today. Just a couple of clips here, guys, that I found. I know there was a lot of tabloid stuff that discussed that meeting with the Elvis. There's one here. What's this? Elvis to meet the Beatles. Fantastic security precautions are ready tonight for the hottest face-to-face meeting Hollywood has ever known. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, is to meet the Beatles. It will be in secret, and even the Beatles themselves do not know where the meeting will take place. I mean, I heard that they went to meet him once and he wasn't home. Is that true? Remember, I'm just a fan. I'm not a researcher. I'm no expert. We're just discussing it together, me and Team Elvis. Private security men fear that if the secret leaked out, there could be a riot. But even without fans, the meeting is bound to be provocative, if not explosive. John, George, Paul, and Ringo stock reply has been that they liked his early records, but they were not so keen on his more recent work. I mean, I think it's pretty well known that, you know, as the movies became cheesy, John Lennon definitely was disappointed. Yeah, I think, but you know, come on, guys, let's be fair. Yeah, once the movies became too cheesy, that didn't suit Elvis, and it actually made Elvis physically sick, making some of these movies that he himself thought were ridiculous, silly, stupid. Yeah, so I get it. I get how the Beatles in the mid-60s just felt disappointed. I get it. Yeah, but you'll never change the influence they had on him and how much they adored him and admired him. And little were they to know the 68 comeback special would just topple them. No offense to the Beatles, and Elvis would be the king again. He always was. We just needed to be reminded. Yeah. Okay, so let's start reading what we've put together. It's quite long. This is going to be a long show, but I've been looking forward to this. I'm a massive fan of Elvis and the Beatles, of course. Right. When Elvis met the Beatles, the full story. It's more than that. It's the whole influence before they met, after they met. The whole. I wanted to give a rounded picture even for people that don't know about this, that are learning. So part of what I like to do at Team Elvis, I like to act as if we know nothing. So we're re-educating everyone on the facts and what happened way back. I mean that in a respectful way. Yeah, I know many of you know everything about Elvis. I don't. I'm still learning. Okay, so Team Elvis today, I want to share something really special. This is one of those moments where the two eras of music actually meet. Elvis Presley, the man who kicked open the door to rock and roll, the Beatles, the band who took the world by storm in the 1960s. So, and I'll say this straight up, I'm a massive Beatles fan. I am a massive Beatles fan. Hands up, guys. Always have been. But even I know when they knew that without Elvis Presley, none of their success would have happened. Elvis was the blueprint, the spark, the beginning. He was. There's no getting away from it, guys. And I mean that in a respectful way, because I know how amazing the Beatles were, but they weren't Elvis. You know, Elvis, one entertainer, exploding with talent and looks and sex appeal and charm and personality, and the most kind, generous man that ever lived, honestly. So back in 1964-65, America had gone absolutely mad for the Beatles. The press was stirring things up with the headlines. Elvis replaced the Beatles. The Beatles take the crown. Naturally, Elvis fans didn't like it. Elvis, even a lot of Americans didn't like hearing it. I get it. In the 3 years I've been running this Elvis channel, I have always noticed that whenever the Beatles are brought up in relation to Elvis, there's a bit of backlash. Not much. I would say majority embrace the Beatles and Elvis, but there is a bit of tension, yeah. But Elvis wasn't he wasn't jealous, he wasn't bitter, he wasn't insecure. He stayed Elvis, calm and confident and respectful. Meanwhile, the Beatles were completely in awe of him, and here's what they actually said. So we've got some things, actual things that came out of the mouths of the Beatles. So John Lennon said, "Before Elvis, there was nothing." Paul McCartney, "The only reason we picked up guitars was because of Elvis Presley." George Harrison, "When I heard Elvis, that was it. That was the direction." Ringo Starr, "He was our hero." Yeah, beautiful. John Lennon also once said something very honest. Elvis died the day he went into the army. And I think that offended some people, but I also think people took it the wrong way. I understand what he means. You've got this rebellious rebel, the wild man of rock and roll, yeah? He goes to the army. When Elvis comes out of the army, Elvis has tamed. He is different. He's doing more of the ballads. And then, I mean, even the movies start to become less raw, yeah? Which is a shame, because I love King Creole. I think the style that Elvis used in King Creole would have been great for any serious movies that could have come his way. Instead, they get a bit corny. I mean, I love GI Blues. Brilliant film. Really enjoy watching it. But it's not James Dean. It's not Marlon Brando. Do you see my point? You do see a bit of Elvis's raw talent in Jailhouse Rock, the movie. And even in Love Me Tender. I understand what John meant, but I do think some people took it the wrong way, honestly. I've always thought John Lennon loved Elvis. I've always thought that. Let's have a look. So it says here, so the thing was, Elvis died the day he went into the army. He didn't mean it literally. He meant the raw, wild, some records Elvis had been tamed by Hollywood. I agree with that. It shows how much they cared about his early work. I agree with that. Elvis respected them too. When someone asked him about the Beatles' success, he just said, "There's room for everybody." That's Elvis all over. Humble, respectful, and secure, and who he was. I don't think that question was answered. I don't think it was like directly just about the Beatles. I think that question where he says there's room for everybody, it was a bit more general. Is that right? Put it in the comments, guys. Or was it referring to the Beatles? Put it in the comments, guys. Remember, I'm learning. We learn together, me and Team Elvis. The meeting happened on the 27th of August, 1965, late night at the Elvis home in Bel Air. No press, no cameras, no recordings. Elvis wanted it private, real, and natural. People who were there all said the same thing. When the Beatles first walked in, it was awkward. Imagine it. So, come on, guys. Most Elvis fans, we know this story, don't we? It's the biggest star of the 1950s, sitting across from the biggest band of the 1960s. Total silence. Nobody knew what to say. I mean, I must say, Elvis was still very massive in the 60s. So, even though he had changed his style, he was still, come on, guys. He was number one, wasn't he? Elvis, with his natural humour, broke the tension. Jerry Schilling remembered Elvis smiling and saying, "If you guys are going to sit there and stare at me all night, I'm going to bed." Everyone laughed and the room relaxed instantly. See, Elvis was joking, wasn't he, guys? Come on. Here's how the night unfolded based on the best accounts from the people who were actually there. So I would say Elvis was bloody looking forward to meeting the Beatles. You know, come on, guys. Elvis, you know, come on. They were very talented. They had changed the world in their own way. You know, John and Paul were gifted musicians. So of course that's going to appeal to Elvis. Of course it is. Their love of music. Yeah. Similar interest concerning, you know, styles of music. So I can imagine Elvis really looking forward to meeting the Beatles. I really think that. I think for him it would have been a big deal. He may have been pretty cool about it, pretty laid back about it, but I can see in his heart he would have been like, found them fascinating. Seriously. 4 guys, quite excitable guys, quite young guys, at the peak of their career, taking over the world. I just think, I believe that Elvis would have really wanted to meet them, and it works both ways. Elvis was massively influenced. The Beatles were massively influenced by Elvis. They were in awe of Elvis, of course. Not just his music and his voice and his movies, whatever, but and the way he looked. But you know, come on, it's Elvis. It's Elvis. He was a legend. Let's face it, a living legend. So here's a bit of a timeline of the night they meet. So at 10:50 p.m, the Beatles arrive, I think, at the Bel Air home. They were nervous. They were excited. They had wanted to meet Elvis for years. I believe that. At 11 p.m, they walk inside. Elvis is in the living room watching TV. He stands up to welcome them. 11:02, total silence. The Beatles sit opposite Elvis. Elvis sits back down. Nobody speaks. Everybody later said it was painfully awkward. So there's other accounts of this, people that were there, yeah? I've heard quite a few people discuss this. Jerry, Priscilla, and more, yeah? So Elvis breaks the ice. Elvis says, "If you guys are just going to sit there and stare at me all night, I'm going to bed." The whole room bursts into laughter. 11:10, drinks, small talk. Everybody starts to relax. The chat about touring, fame, films, and music. 11:20, a guitar appears. Elvis grabs the bass guitar. Paul McCartney goes to the piano, and the mood becomes fun and natural. So Paul was the bass guitarist, wasn't he? 11:25, a light jam session. Joe Esposito said Elvis got up, grabbed a bass, and started messing around with it. That broke the ice completely. John Lennon would later say, "I remember Elvis sitting, playing the bass. It was surreal. We were watching our idol." Wow. 11:40, conversation deepens. They talk about early influences, fans, fame, the music business, and the life on the road. At midnight, Elvis gives them a tour. He shows them around the house, his awards, his little mementos, and relaxed and friendly. See, I didn't know this. This is where we learn together, guys. I didn't know that Elvis gave them a tour of the house. Did not know it. 12:40 a.m. Someone suggests a group photo. Elvis politely declines. He wants the night to stay private and not publicity. And not a publicity. He said, "Oh, I would have loved it if they took some pictures together." So at 1 a.m, so they're in the early hours of the morning, guys. More stories and more laughs. They sit back down, talk more, enjoy each other's company. George Harrison is still starstruck. So at 1:25 a.m, the Beatles say goodbye. They thank Elvis one by one. They leave absolutely buzzing. At 1:30 a.m, Elvis reflects with his friends. People close to him say he genuinely enjoyed the night and had real respect for the Beatles. I believe that. I believe that. Wow. Could you imagine being there? Imagine being a fly on the wall of that. Yeah. What this meeting did for Elvis, and I've read this. I actually agree with most with that. Partly this relit a spark in Elvis. I think the spark was there, but I think it added fuel to it. Does that make sense? Because after all the movie making, you know, after all the dull movies that were made, and I mean that in a respectful way, because I love all Elvis movies. I love watching Elvis looking young, healthy, um, but some of them were dull and repetitive and a bit too cheesy. But I still love them. But you get my point. So some say there was a change in Elvis after meeting the Beatles. I think a few things happened to Elvis around the mid-60s that were pointing Elvis in the direction of the 68 comeback. I really feel that, yeah? But let's read this. What this meeting did for Elvis: in the weeks and months after, people around Elvis noticed a shift. He started talking more seriously about music again. I get it. He just met the Beatles. More passion, more direction. And within a couple of years, we get the 68 comeback special where Elvis reminded the entire world who he was. And he was, come on, guys. I don't care what anyone says. I know the Beatles were amazing. But once Elvis did the 68 comeback special, he blew everyone out of the water. There was no number two. I mean, sorry, everyone else was number two. Elvis was number one, even above the Beatles. Yeah. And I love the Beatles, but that's how I feel. And the Beatles never forgot that night either. Paul McCartney meeting Elvis was like meeting the king, because that's exactly what he was. Ringo Starr, we were just four lads who loved him. George Harrison joked that he expected Elvis to be glowing when they walked in, which is funny. You know, I've heard a couple of negative things that George Harrison said concerning Elvis. I think even, you know, maybe one of the others as well. I choose to just ignore it. Let's just keep going. So here's the real truth. The Beatles didn't replace Elvis. They weren't trying to. They followed him. They learned from him. They respected him deeply and welcomed them with kindness, confidence, with zero ego. That's the Elvis that we defend. That's the Elvis we honor. A man secure in his talent, respectful to every generation, and still influencing the world today. So I think this was just the way this was pieced together. I think it's a very fair way to discuss Elvis and the Beatles. I would love to have been there. Unfortunately, we don't have any pictures. So we've lost, obviously, we've lost George Harrison, we've lost John Lennon. So, but I'm still a big fan of Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. So, come on, guys. Will there ever be another Beatles? Will there ever be another Elvis? I don't think so. The closest thing was probably Michael Jackson. And so, history in the making, guys. So please, we can discuss this maybe on a live stream. What do you feel? How do you feel about Elvis meeting the Beatles? Do you think there was any animosity between Elvis and the Beatles? Are you disappointed with certain things that were said by some of the Beatles concerning Elvis? I see them very different. Yeah, Elvis is unique in his own way, and Elvis to me will always be number one. Yeah. I'm so glad we have Elvis. I'm so glad we have the Beatles. You know? So these people changed the world for the better, transformed everything. I really believe that. So I really enjoyed this. One of my favorite videos I've made. I could go on and on. I love talking about the Beatles and Elvis in this way. There was obviously a huge amount of respect for each other's talent, I think, and I would say even for each other's success, each other's worldwide fame, the way that these people transform the world and will be with us forever, long after we're gone, guys. People will still be talking about Elvis and the Beatles. Yeah. So take care, guys. I've got a couple of other things I want to go through. I remember I wanted to do a June Junico review of the book, and I also know we still have to do Donna Presley's video that she released yesterday, which I'm hoping to do today. We are still doing Elvis facts of the day and Elvis on this day stuff and little shorts. I'm really enjoying learning all these new facts and reposting them. A lot of you already know them, but I like it. I like it. Remember, we're not just a Defending Elvis channel. We are also an Elvis channel. We are also Elvis fans. So we're trying to do a mixed bag of topics, a more rounded mixed bag. And when we do defend, we're trying to be more understanding, respectful, even forgiving. Yeah. Okay, guys, love you all. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be back for more. Take care, guys. Love you all.